Hello guys, today we're going to be talking about the monster of the Andes. This man wasn't given this name for fun. This man has killed over 350 plus victims in all of his life. He was once ranked as the prolific number one serial killer all over the world. And who is this man? This is known as Pedro Alonso Lopez. Pedro Alonso Lopez was born on the 8th of October 1948. He was born in Bernardillo, Colombia. His mother's name was Benilda Lopez, and just 6 months after his birth, they moved to Santa Isabel. Now, before his birth, Pedro never had a father figure. He didn't meet his father. Why was that? The father was murdered in La Valencia. Now, La Valencia was a Colombian civil war that lasted for like 10 years. This was a civil war between the Colombia Conservative Party and the Colombian Liberal Party. The father was just caught in the crossfire and he was murdered. So Pedro never had a father figure. It was said that his mother was a sexual worker, and he was the seventh child out of 13 children this lady has. So Pedro was born into poverty. He experienced his mother being beaten by different men whenever they come to the house. So he experienced abuse in the home. He experienced poverty. Now, at the age of 9, Pedro left home. Now, there are two theories. One was saying Pedro left the home because of the whole hardship, that the mother was abusive, the home wasn't conducive enough for him, so he ran away from home and he left. While the other source said the mother said she caught him trying to molest his younger sister, so she banned him from the house and sent him away from the home. So either way, Pedro left home at the age of 9. Now, at the age of 9, Pedro went into the streets of Bogota. In the streets of Bogota, newly fresh street kid, there was an elderly man who saw Pedro and invited Pedro. Oh, come, little boy. I'm going to give you bread. I'm going to give you a bed. I'm going to make you comfortable. With his innocence, Pedro followed this man. Unknowingly to him, this man took Pedro to an uncompleted building and sexually molested Pedro. After that incident, Pedro became hardened and figured out a way to protect himself in the streets. Now, at the age of 12, he was still a street kid, and there was this American immigrant family. They saw Pedro on the road begging for alms. They decided to adopt Pedro. So Pedro was adopted by this family. They put him through school. This school was made for orphans. Now, in this school, there was a teacher in the school that sexually abused Pedro. And immediately this incident happened, this triggered Pedro. He ran to the school office, stole some money, stole some cash, and ran back to the streets of Bogota. The streets is what he has always known since he was 5, so he went back there. So that was like home. Now he became a proper street kid. A proper street in the sense that he joined gangs for protection. He was eating from trash cans. He started taking drugs, this raw form of cocaine. He was taking into drugs. He was fighting with knives and the rest. And as a street kid, there's the way to find money, the way to get means of income. They were stealing also. Now, in the year 1969, Pedro was arrested for auto theft and he was sentenced 7 years. Now, in the prison, there were 4 inmates who gang raped Pedro. They were taking turns, one by one, taking turns, and they gang raped him. After which, Pedro didn't let it slide. He hunted these inmates and killed them. Now, the court ruled this out as self-defense, an act of self-defense. So they gave him just 2 years extra. It is already 7 years jail term that he was serving already. So in total, he served for 9 years. Now, in the year 1978, he was done with his jail term. Upon his release, the real monster of the Andes was born. As he was released, Lopez decided to start drifting through South America within these countries, Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. Now, Pedro said as he was drifting in one of his interviews, he said he had killed over 100 victims at a time as he was drifting through these countries. where they had killed over 100 victims. Now, there was this certain time in Peru, this indigenous community, the Ayacuchos, these were native Indians that reside in Peru. They noticed that their little ones were missing, their minors were missing a lot. And when they report to the police didn't really do anything. So they were already noticing that their kids were missing. And these kids were missing from the age of 9 to 12. These were the ranges at which they were always going missing. Nobody was hearing anything about them. Nobody was seeing anything. They would just say, oh, this child is no longer there. Now, there was this particular day, it seems like luck ran out for Pedro. He was trying to abduct a little girl. And one adult noticed what Pedro was trying to do and alarmed others. So he was caught. And when he was caught, Pedro was about to experience jungle justice. They beat him up, they naked him, they even buried him and covered him with sand and poured honey all over him. They wanted ants to eat him up so he dies there. But luckily for him, luckily for Pedro, there was an American missionary lady that came to his rescue and asked them to please, they shouldn't do jungle justice, they should hand him over to the authorities. And she tried convincing them and they were convinced. So they handed Pedro to this missionary lady. Now the missionary handed him over to the authorities. And on getting there, the authorities in Peru, they didn't do anything. They just deported him back to Ecuador. He wasn't arrested for anything. And that was because the Peruvian authorities didn't really give much. They didn't really listen to the Ayacucho community. So, and that was how Pedro was free. He escaped near-death experience. So now he has gone back to Ecuador now. And from the year 1978 through 1980, a lot of minors were going missing. They were missing and missing. Now between the countries of Colombia and Ecuador. And when these people go to the authorities, they go to the police and lay complaints, the authorities just dismisses them and be like, oh, it's a case of high increase in human trafficking. Or, oh, your little girls just ran away from home. There was nothing done at the time. So this Pedro was having his time of his life. So one particular day in Ecuador, he went to a supermarket. Now he went to a supermarket trying to abduct a little girl again. The mother was selling food stuff in the market, and beside the mother there was this little girl. She was around 9-10. His normal range of victims. He was trying to buy something from the woman, but the other he was looking at the little girl. And the little girl was like, she had to tap her mom and say, Mama, this old man is looking at me in a weird, funny way. And this woman looked and asked the man, why are you looking at my daughter that way? And immediately Pedro ran away. And before then, the Ecuadorians and the Colombians were already noticing an increased rate in their little girls. So when this mother noticed this elderly man trying to abduct her daughter, she alerted everybody in the supermarket, and they all ran and they finally caught up with Pedro. Now, Pedro was arrested in Ecuador. He was arrested by the police and they tried interviewing him, asking him why and why are you. He wasn't saying anything. He kept quiet for days. Even though he knew he was guilty, he kept claiming he was innocent and that he's a poor man. He doesn't do anything. He sells things. He's very innocent. And Pedro had this, he was very insignificant because he was poor. He sells trinkets on the road. So nobody really thought that this man could actually do things. So for days and days, these authorities tried interviewing Pedro, but Pedro wasn't giving in. So at a time, the policemen were already giving up, not until a very heavy flood flooded the streets of Ecuador, and four missing girls, their body just came out in the streets, which was weird. So when they took these children to the forensic team was determined that these children were murdered. And that was when the police knew that this wasn't high risk in human trafficking, that these missing children were being murdered. And that's when they started really trying to interview Pedro, but Pedro was still not giving in. Not until they decided to change their tactics. Now, the captain at the time decided to befriend Pedro, making it seem like he's Pedro's friend, not using this approach anymore. And surprisingly, Pedro was dishing out all his confessions. He started confessing and telling them that he has killed over 300 girls. At first, the police thought this man was insane and is just bluffing. Not until Pedro decided to take them to every site he dropped these little girls. And in total, 74 bodies were recovered. 74 dead bodies were recovered. And the police were amazed that this man, who seems like a nobody, who seems very poor, he had a very distinctive memory, in the sense that in every of his victims, he knew where he kept their body. Imagine killing over 100 plus victims and you knew the exact site you dumped these bodies. The police were amazed. They asked him how does he know they are victims. He said that's because most of the times he keeps them in a particular site where he buries his body. He can heap 3 or 4 bodies together in a particular shallow grave. So whenever he goes there, sometimes he says he goes to talk to these little ones. He goes to talk to them, and when he's bored and he sees that they're not responding, he goes to find a new set of girls. And that was why he was killing and killing and killing. Now the authorities were asking him, okay, how do you charm these girls? He told the police, oh, he doesn't ever use force. He doesn't kidnap them. In his own sense, kidnapping means using force, but he doesn't kidnap them. He said he tries charming these little ones. And he told the police that this man, he said he goes for only street kids. This man doesn't go for the high and mighty. His reason being that these street kids were, nobody pays attention to these children. You know, as a street kid, those ones that sell newspaper on the road, that sell things on the road, their parents are not well to do, they hawk on the street. And you know, if something happens to these children, nobody really pays attention to these children. So those were his victims, he targets. He targets these little children, these street kids. And he also doesn't go for white kids. He said the white kids, their parents, their mothers are always watching over them like hawk. So he goes for the darker kids. Now the police asked him, okay, how do you charm the children? You say you charm them as a stranger. How do you charm children and they don't know you? So how do you charm them? And he went over saying, oh yes, most of the times he acts lost and be like, oh please, I'm looking for this chapel. Can you take me to this chapel? And these little kids will be like, oh yes, I can. With their innocence and their naivety, they take him round and he takes them to a place where even if they scream from now to tomorrow, even if they scream with their loudest lungs, nobody will still listen to them, nobody will hear their voices. And that's how he does it. Now, he said most of the time he also offers them money. Like, oh please take me on a tour. I'm new to this city. Can you take me around? And this children, you know, they are eager for money. And they'll be very happy. Oh, my parents will be happy that, oh, I'm bringing money back home. So they take this money, trying to take him on a tour. Not unknowingly to them, he takes them to a very bushy area, to a forest. And now, it doesn't even end there. Pedro says, this man says, he rapes these children throughout the night. He doesn't just take these children, rape them for like 5 minutes, then kill them. No, he rapes them over and over again throughout the night. When he's done, he continues the next morning. And when he's done, he said he doesn't like strangling this because he doesn't kill them with any object. He uses his hands, he strangles these little ones. And he said he doesn't kill them at night, he kills them during the day when everywhere is bright. He said he has the greatest pleasure when he looks at their faces as they are dying, as life is leaving their body. He loves seeing the look in their eyes. And that's where he gets his highest orgasm. Like, really. And when I was going through this story, I was like, man, this man is sick. I thought about all the trauma these little girls will go through. A child of 9, 10, 11, 12. you rape these girls all through the night, then you continue the next morning before deciding to strangle them. Now he told the authorities that he was trying to help them, that he's on a mission, he's a man of God, in the sense that these children were poor, so he doesn't want them to experience poverty, he doesn't want them to keep on suffering. So when he rapes them, he kills them. That way he said they go to heaven and they rest instead of suffering on the earth. And the authorities at the time, the policemen, were so mad, they had to restrain themselves from strangling this man. After all this, Pedro is quite manipulative. In one of his interviews, I quote, he said, no matter the number of victims you have, be it you commit one murder, you commit two murder, you commit three murder, the highest jail term is 16 years. That's the maximum jail term for murder or for rape or for such heinous crimes. I quote. That was what he said. So he already knew in his mind that even though he kills just one, kills two, kills three, the highest years he's going to spend in jail, in prison, was 16 years. So he was already ready to go to prison. And that was true. 16 years. He was given 16 years to serve. The policemen saw the pride, the ego that at which Pedro was confessing like he really did something legendary. They were so proud. Most of the time, he was even asking the policemen to take pictures with him with the skulls of these children. And even when he was going to their different sites, he was proud and pointed as this man didn't have conscience, he didn't have guilt, he didn't have anything. This man was a sociopath, he was a psychopath. At a point, he even started showing symptoms of personality disorder, different people personality disorder. At the time, he was given 16 years in jail term. Now in 1998, upon his release, in the prison yard, Pedro behaved himself properly. He was even released 2 years before the actual release date. That he was released 2 years earlier. That means he spent just 14 years. After all these debts he caused, he was released 14 years of good behavior. Upon his release in the year 1998, he went to his mother. But before going to his mother's home, when he was released, the people of Ecuador were mad. They were angry that why will this man be released so early? So in order for them not, if they saw the way the people were aggravated and they were angry, they decided to take him to a psychiatric hospital. Now he spent just 4 years there. He spent 4 years in the psychiatric hospital and he was released after which on the psychiatrist there said he was sane. He wasn't insane. So they released him and said okay, he was fine, it was okay. But on one condition, they released him on a $50 bail and on the condition that he must come every month for checkup. But when he was released, Pedro never did any of that. Instead, he went straight to his mother's home. Remember, back at Santa Isabela. Remember, this was like the first time after how many years? Since when he was 9, he left the home. So now this was like the first time the mother was seeing him after how many years? And he went there, he asked the mother for his inheritance. And the mom was like, I'm still poor. I don't have any other thing to give you. And in rage and anger, he took the mother's bed and chair. The only thing she had in her house, just a bed and a chair. And he took it and sold it off. And till then, he left. That was the first. And now this was the last time the mother saw her son. Now in 2002, there was another case of a minor who was murdered in El Espinal in Colombia too. And also in 2012, there was another case in Tunja. All these were similarities of Pedro Alonso Lopez murder kind of way. The way he murders them, he strangles them. Now they interviewed the mother recently and she said she's a Catholic, that whenever a relative or a close one dies, she feels it. But ever since he left her, that she hasn't felt anything like that. So she believes that he's still alive. Pedro Alonso is at large. He's a fugitive. There are warrants for his search and arrest, but he hasn't been found. Since the last time he met the mother, that was the last time anybody ever saw Pedro ever again. So we don't know if he's dead or alive. But October this year will make him 75 years old if he's still alive. If he's still alive. So what do you all feel? Are we safe? I don't feel safe when listening to it, even though I'm not from Colombia, I'm in Nigeria. But I don't know how you all feel. But the fact that this man is still living, is still breathing, if he's still alive, he's walking past anybody just like an ordinary person. And this is a man that has killed over 350 victims. I'm scared just thinking about it. This man has no soul. He has no remorse. He doesn't feel guilt. He doesn't have any emotions at all. So what do you all think? Do you think he's still alive? And what do you all think about this story?